Hello, everybody. This is Miss Grant, the Alumni Success Counselor for DCP, and today I'm excited to walk you through your 2023-2024 financial aid renewal application. It is really important that you know that you do need a couple of documents to start your 2021 tax returns for both yourself and your parents. The W-2s and all other income and asset information, as well as the date of birth for your parents. You should know yours. And your login information and your parents' login if they're going to be doing FAFSA, and your parent PIN if you're doing the Dream App application. You will also be asked to your tax information is going to look a little bit like this. This is what a W-2 looks like. Obviously, this is just an example, but they usually are like smaller copies that you have. This is what a 1040 or tax return looks like. Obviously, this is just a sample, and I put in some numbers on here that we'll be using as we fill out this application. But keep in mind that it should look like this, right? It'll say 1040 and it'll say 2021. Part of the application will also ask you if your parents have a Schedule 1 form. So this is what a Schedule 1 looks like. It usually is about a page or two behind the 1040. So you can take a look at the packet and see if your parents have a Schedule 1. It is totally fine if they don't, but this is what it will look like. It'll say Form 1040, Schedule 1, or if they have a Schedule 2, similar to the Schedule 1, it'll be after the 1040. It'll say 2021, and then it looks something like this. Okay, so this is what the documents look like, and so that way you know what I'm referring to when we go through the application. This is what the W-2 looks like. It'll have your parents' information on here along with the information of their employer. So to get started, today we are going to be working on the application for the California Dream. So what you're going to do is you are going to go to the California Dream application website. That looks like this. And usually what I do is I just type in California Dream, right? Something like this. And then I go to the first one, it's dream.tsac.gov. And so then what you do is you're gonna log in as a returning user. So it is really important that you pull up your login information that you used last year. You should all have that written down somewhere. I have a sample account or a dummy account, however you want to call it. The first time that you log in, just so you know, you are going to be asked to reset your password most likely. And so make sure that you are doing that. If you, for some reason, change your password, change your email or no longer have access to the email, you do have to go through the reset process. It sometimes takes a little while. Like this time, it's going to send a verification email. And it usually does that after a while of not having logged in. So even though I reset this morning, it's going to ask me to do it again. It wasn't even this morning. It was like a couple of minutes ago, maybe half an hour ago. All right. So once you're able to do that, I had to actually reset my password this morning, and now I am going, it asked me to do the authentication code. But now that you've done that, you're going to go down here, and then you're going to click the 2023-2024 application. It's super important that you make sure it is this one, because a lot of students in the past have thought that they did it, and obviously they haven't. So then it's going to ask you if you have obtained a social security since the last time you did this application. So since last October, if you got a social, then you're going to say yes. In this scenario, I'm going to say no. If you have DACA, you can obviously say no because it's not a new number that you've got. It's the same number. You could put your DACA number. If you do not have DACA, you don't have to worry about it. You do have an ITIN number that you will be able to use as identification. Then it's going to ask you, or it's going to give you some tips as you review. One of the really important things, and I hope that you remember, is that as you go, we want to make sure that you are taking note of all of the questions that are on here. And if it gives you an opportunity to save, save. This is the first time that I'm going through the application. as a renewal. So if anything new comes up, just bear with me. Okay. So this is as a renewal, a lot of your information from last year will be kept on there. Again, if you have a DACA number, social security number from DACA, you'll go ahead and put it on here, or you'll have an ITIN number. And if you don't know what your ITIN number is, you can usually go to your parents' taxes and then find your name, and then it'll have a number listed under social security. And that will be your ITIN number. Okay. So then you could put it on here. For the purposes of this sample, I'm going to leave it blank. And then it's gonna ask you to confirm your email address and then your mailing information. If you haven't moved since last year, you can just click next. Everything will stay the same. You will click what state you live in. So assuming that you stay in California, and then it's gonna ask you if you resided in this state before that date. If you move to another state, then you will do that and then answer that your the residency time as well. Do keep in mind that that will mean something in terms of what you're eligible for. Okay. So then you're gonna add your permanent phone number. So I'm just gonna add my phone number on here. If you know your SSID, you can put it on here. This is the number that is listed on your transcripts. If you do not have it, do not worry about it. It's gonna be fine. If you have a license, you can put it on here. If you don't have one, you don't have to worry about it. Click next. You will answer your marital status. If you're single, obviously you will put that you're single. If you're married, you will be asked to also provide your spouse's information. Okay. And then you're going to click your citizenship status. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So if you are a US citizen, you will likely are doing the wrong application, and you should be doing FAFSA unless there's a specific reason why you're doing this. And that's usually if you are trying to qualify for in-state tuition because you just moved to California. Otherwise, if you are someone who has a U visa or any other type of visa and you qualify for financial aid, you would put that you're an eligible non-citizen. If you're someone who's undocumented, has DACA, and or does not have any type of visa, even if you came in with a visa but you no longer have it, then you would put I'm not a citizen or an eligible non-citizen. Okay, so you click next, and it's gonna ask you information about your it's gonna ask you information about your education. And then what is your high school completion? It's gonna be completed a high school diploma. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin this new school year? For most of you, the answer is going to be no, unless you're doing this for grad school, then obviously it would be yes. What will your grade level be when you begin? So you're gonna check it off. I'm gonna do it as if I'm a sophomore, but this will totally be up to you if you're gonna be, junior, senior, or doing a graduate degree. You can do that as well. And then what college degree or certificate will you be working toward? And I'm going to put first bachelor's. If you are in community college, you would be doing an associate's degree for general education and transfer. And then obviously, if you're doing grad school or teaching credential program, then you would do those. But for the purposes of this sample, I'll be doing first bachelor's. Okay, then this information should have saved from the last time you submitted. And this is your parents' education completion. Okay, so here it's going to search for your high school, and in the application, it saved it from last time. So there's nothing really that you need to do. Just click next. Here is where you're going to be adding the name of the college. So let's say that I wanted to, just for an example, just so you can see if your school is not listed on there, it should be, but in case it's not, or you changed schools since last year, you would go ahead and click search. Excuse me, I'm a little bit sick, so I sound a little funky. And then you click the school, and then it will add it to your list, and then you would put what your housing plan is. If you are at least slightly considering living on campus, I would highly suggest that you put your housing plan is on campus so that you can be offered financial aid as if you're living on campus. And then if you decide not to go through with it, you don't submit a housing application, then your financial aid award gets adjusted automatically. So there's nothing else you need to do. But if you put off campus and then change your mind, it's a little bit more tricky to then be considered for financial aid. So if it's even in the slightest of your thoughts to do on campus, just put it on campus. Obviously, community colleges don't have on-campus options, so you would put either off-campus or with parent, depending on what your plan is. Okay, so then here is going to ask you for your age, and then if you are married or if you're going to be starting a master's or doctorate program. I'm going to put no for all of these. But if you say yes to any of these, that means you are going to be considered an independent student, meaning that you do not have to provide your parent information. If all of these are a no for you, then you would be considered dependent, and then you still have to provide parent information. Then it's going to ask you about any dependents that you may have. So if you have or if you will have any children that receive at least half of their support from you between July, so this upcoming summer to next summer, then you would say yes. If you do have any children or will be having children starting in the summer, then you definitely want to say yes, so that you can qualify for additional grants for students with dependents. Or if you have anybody else that financially depends on you starting or through next summer, or well, not this upcoming summer, but the following summer, 2024. So this could be like, say that your parents stop working and they fully, or at least half of their support is coming from you, then you're gonna claim them, or they depend on you, then you can say yes. For the purposes of this example, I'm gonna say no. These are questions about active duty or other dependency questions. So if you're in the U.S. Armed Forces, which is unlikely, then you can answer these questions. If you're a veteran, if in a time since you were turned 13, were both of your parents deceased, or were you in the foster care system or dependent or ward of the court? If that is your case, you're going to click yes. There will probably be an additional request for documentation once you submit the application, but it does allow you to be considered for additional aid. And then this question is always a confusing one for folks. If you were an emancipated minor, and what this means is you legally divorced from your parents. You would know if you are, because you would have gone to court and needed to provide documentation that you were able to provide, like to basically take care of yourself, and you did not need your parents anymore before you turned 18. So this is I would say not as common, but if you are emancipated, you would definitely know. And then this one is, does somebody else other than your parent or step parent have legal guardianship of you? And so this is very common, but please keep in mind that this means that you would have had gone to a court, and the court or the judge decided that somebody else has legal guardianship of you. It does not, it wouldn't qualify. Or if you are just staying with a family member, but you haven't gone through court, even a notarized letter would not count. You would need it to have gone to the court and have that be determined by a judge. So for this, for the purpose of this sample, I'm going to put no. And then the next one is of homelessness. So if you were homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless at any point, this is pretty similar. If this was your situation, you're going to click yes, and there may be a possibility for you to be qualified for additional support. Okay. All right. So because I said no, there are no additional questions being asked about that. Okay. All right, perfect. So then there's another question here about foster care placement, because there are additional funds and resources available to anybody who was placed under foster care or court dependency or wardship at any time between the ages of 16 and 18. You would know if you are, and you would likely be asked for additional information later. Okay, so then it's going to ask you about your own filing status. So if you filed taxes in 2021, you would already completed. If you did not work, then you were going to put not going to file, which is likely for a lot of you students. And for a lot of students that they didn't work or didn't make enough to work. If you are putting that you will file, I will ask you to really think about whether this is something you are going to do. A lot of students feel like they just realize they need to, and so they're gonna put it on their plate. And the reality is, if you didn't make the threshold amount of money, and you already talked to someone and you're not gonna file, it's okay to put not going to file. Or again, submit your information. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to put not going to file. But if you are going to file, or maybe I do already completed, it's going to ask you what tax return you did, which is the 1040 is very likely that's the one that you were doing. What your filing status is, very likely single unless you are married, and then you could decide if you're doing married, file jointly, or head of household. And then it's gonna ask you if you file the Schedule 1 form, and the Schedule 1 is the one that looks like, excuse me, it looks like this. So if this is a document that's on your tax return, then you're gonna say yes or no, or don't know. I'm gonna put no for the sample for just the purposes. Actually, I'm gonna put yes, so you can see what questions they ask. And then here it's gonna ask you to go to line 11 of your 1040 form. So then you would go to your 1040 form and look for line 11 and put in whatever number is on there. And then it's also gonna ask you to go to form 1040, line 22, and then subtract whatever is on line 2 of Schedule 2. So then that's why I mentioned at the beginning, you want to see if there is a Schedule 2 in your document, because if there is, then you are going to need it, right? So right now we're going to assume this is a 0. And so in line 22 of the 1040, it'll be $1,000. So it says 1,000, whatever's on line 22, which is $1,000 minus whatever's on line 2, which is 0. Then we would just put 1,000 on here. Sorry. And 40,000 on here. This is just the sample number that I put together for the purposes of this application. Okay, so this is assuming that you did file your taxes. How much did you earn from working wages? And so this is information that you would get from your W-2. It would be on box 1. So again, these are amounts that I just made up for the purposes of this application. And then as of today, what is your total current balance of cash, savings, and checkings account? So this question is very always scary for students. FAFSA or California Dream will not be checking your bank account, so do not worry about that. But you also want to give them an amount that is realistic. So what I usually tell students is, after you pay all of your bills, you pay every single thing that you need on an average day, how much money do you usually have? And the closest to 0, the better. So some students will say like $50, $0, $500, whatever that means for you. And then as of today, what is the net worth of your investments, including real estate? So if you own, as a student, if you own a second home or anything that's making you money, you can put it on here. This is not very common for students, so I usually put 0, and then any businesses or investment farms, which again are not very likely. So then I put 0. And then it's going to ask you about additional financial information. So education credits, you could look to see if you have a Schedule 3, and then look at line 3 if it's on there. If you do have to pay any child support because of divorce or separation, you put it on here. Any taxable earnings that you get from federal work study, any taxable college grants or scholarships that you need to report. And if you do get any of these, you will be notified. Not all the scholarships are taxable. So if this doesn't seem familiar, it doesn't apply to you, so you can leave it at 0. If you were in the military, you got any combat or special combat pay, you can put here the amount that was taxable. And then if you are earning any money from the cooperative education program, which you would know. If this does not sound familiar, do not worry about it. There's some additional untaxed information. So you can read through. Most of these are not as common. But if you already know, and again, if you don't recognize any of these things, you likely are not getting it. There's also like there's guidance on where you can look. So this would be Form 1040, Schedule 1, line 15 through 19, 1040, line 2A, right? If you receive any child support, this is like you have a child and somebody's paying you child support. If you are paying for the cost of living of somebody in the military, a church, or any other organization, you would put on here that as well. If you're a veteran, any non-educational benefits that you're getting, any other untaxed income that you're receiving, like welfare, social security, opportunity act benefits, anything like that, you would put it on here. And then any other money that was not reported. Like again, these are very unlikely. So for the most part, they'll stay at zero. And then you can move on to the next thing. Here it's asking if you received any of these benefits in 2021 or 2022, right? So keep in mind that Medicaid is not Medi-Cal. Medicaid is a federal program. And so if you got Social Security or Medicaid, then you would click that. If you got SNAP or CalFresh in California, free or reduced lunch, especially if you're a senior, then you would click that. Any TANF or CalWorks in California support, or WIC, or any of these additional programs. I think the free or reduced lunch, and then WIC or CalFresh are some of the most common ones. And so this is, excuse me, this is asking you if you're a dislocated worker. So this is any person who is receiving unemployment benefits because they were laid off, and is unlikely to return to their old job, is being laid off because that's a notice from their job, or the person is unemployed because of natural disaster or economic conditions. So this is very common among folks that got laid off due to COVID. Like the companies either closed off or they are no longer needing a certain type of employees. And you were laid off, then I would say yes. Otherwise, you can click no. You would click next. And then then it's gonna go into your parents' demographics. So this is the whole portion that we did in the previously was for students that do file taxes. Obviously, if you do not file taxes, then you would just say not going to file and then move on to this portion of the application. It would fast forward you here. It's gonna ask you what your parents' marriage status is, or marital status. I'm gonna put unmarried and both parents living together because that's my parents. It's gonna ask you for your parents' social security or ITIN number. Again, you are going to go based off of what's on their 1040 form and ask them if the social security number that they have on here is their ITIN or the social that they used to work. If it's the social that they used to work, then you want to ask them for their ITIN number. Okay, so you'll put it on here. I'm just gonna put it's just a sample 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9, just so I can show you. I'm gonna put parent 1. That's my dad's. And okay, and then parent 2. If you have a parent 2, you can put it on here. If you don't know, then you just leave it blank. Oh, I think it's gonna ask you. Oh, it's because I put unmarried living together. That's right. Yeah, and this is like another sample that I did. This is just like a random date. If they have an email address, you can put it on here. What state do your parents live in? We're put California. Did they start living here before January 2018? I'm gonna say yes. Okay. So now it's gonna ask you for your parent household information. So this is asking you to tell them how many people live in your parents' household. So you're gonna include yourself, your parents, any children that depend financially on your parents or anybody else. So this is very common. Like if your grandparents live with you, your cousin moved in with you or whatever, like you would also count them as part of your household. So what I do is I'm gonna count myself, both of my parents, I had 5 siblings, so there were 7 of us, and then my cousin came to live with us at some point, right? So then there was 8 people in my family. And then it's gonna ask how many of these people in your family are gonna be college students. Do not include your parents. So if your parents are going to college, they will not count. But I'm gonna put 2 because it was me and my sister that were going to college. And then it's gonna ask you for your parents' filing status. So if they filed, put already completed. If they're not, if they haven't filed for 2021, ask them, are you really gonna file it so that you can click will file or not going to file? Either way, the sooner that we know, the better, right? If they're not going to file, then we can figure out what to do. If they are seriously considering of filing, ask them if they can do it by the end of the year, which is December, so that you don't have to be having your stuff on hold. So I'm gonna put already completed, assuming that your parents already did that. And then it's gonna ask what type of tax return. I'm gonna say the 1040. And then what is your parents' filing status? Just for the purposes of this example, I chose married file jointly. And then did your parents file Schedule 1? I'm gonna put no, but again, if your parents have one, you're gonna put yes. Okay, what was your parents' adjusted gross income? And then again, it's gonna tell you which line to look at. So you would look at line 11, and then that's the 40,000 that I put on there. And then enter your parents' income tax return, line 22 minus Schedule 2, line 2. Very similar to the other one. You're gonna look at your parents' tax returns. If they have a Schedule 2, you will see if there's anything on line 2. If there's nothing, then you just assume a 0. If it's, let's say, for the purposes of this example, if it says 100, and then line 11 says, sorry, and line 22 says 1,000, then I'm gonna put, it would be 1,000 minus 100, which is like 900, right? And then here it's gonna ask you how much did each parent work. So if both of your parents work, then you are gonna have to figure out how much did each of them earn by looking at their W-2s, right? So say that this is the W-2 for my first parent, and it says 40,000 and my income was 40,000, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense because my mom doesn't work, right? But if both of your parents work, then that W-2 is probably going to look different. And I'm just going to say, oh, well, my dad got 20,000 and then my mom got 20,000. So these two should add up to their income. Does that make sense? So that those 2 numbers added together should be what is on line 11. Okay, for the most part. If it's not lining up, you can hit me up and we can figure out what's going on, or if there's some kind of explanation in some of the other forms. Okay, but for the most part, the W-2s will tell you how much your parents earned on the box 1. If your parents have more than one W-2, then basically what you have to do is add the different amounts on box 1 for each of the W-2s of your parents, and then you put it on here. Okay. And then it's gonna ask the similar question, what is your parents' total balance of cash, savings, and checkings? And then you are gonna ask them and tell them pretty similar to what I mentioned earlier, like on an average day, how much extra money do you have after you pay everything? Everything. And they could be like, oh no, well, we don't have any money. Like, great, then we put 0, right? Or they say like 1,000 or 500 or whatever they say, the closest to 0, the better for you, because that's basically like extra money that you have to pay for school. Okay. And then if they have any investments, including real estate, this does not include any property that they may own in another country. This is particularly to the US. And if they own their home that they're currently living in, that would not count because this is asking for a second home or anything that's making them money. Okay. And then as of today, what is the current worth of their businesses, investment firms? Again, not very common, especially in California, or in the Bay. But if it applies to them, then you can put the number on there. So very similar questions. If your parents are not veterans or did not go to college, these are likely going to be 0. So you can leave them blank. Here's information about untaxed information. I'm sorry, about untaxed income. So you're gonna go ahead and ask if there are any, they're contributing to any pensions, retirement, if they pay for the living cost of anybody in the church or the military, if they're veterans, if they're getting any benefits again, or any other untaxed income that they're not reporting. Very unlikely, but you can go ahead and ask them. Okay, very similar to the previous question. This is if you or anybody, your parents in your household receive benefits from any of these. So this is again like anybody in your family, right? If they got Medicaid, again, this is a federal program, so not Medi-Cal, Medicaid, or if they got Social Security income, and this means that they get a check in the mail with money. If they got CalFresh, if they got free or reduced lunch, so if you have any siblings that might have qualified during 2021 or this year, any CalWorks money, WIC, or anything like that, you would click it on there. And then if your parents are a dislocated worker, again, that means that your parents are unemployed and are likely not going to be returning to that job. After that, you are going to go ahead and review your application one more time just to make sure that everything's clear to go. And you go like this, just double check everything makes sense. Okay. And make sure that your colleges are staying there, they saved. I usually click save application just to make sure that if I get kicked out or something, it gets saved. Does take a little while, but it saves you a lot of time in the future. Then you go here. Again, remember that I only walked through the part about student finances, so I can show you what it looks like. But if you did not or were not going to file, then you just click not going to file, and then it skips through a bunch of questions. Okay, it will still ask you about your assets and your wages. So I'm actually just gonna change this so it doesn't. Actually, it doesn't matter. Sorry, not to confuse you. It's still gonna ask you if you worked at all, because even if you didn't file taxes, it could mean that you still worked. Okay. Then it's gonna go through there. You just double check that everything makes sense. Your parents' information. And then if you are like, oh, I filled it out, but I'm still unsure that I'm ready to submit, then you can save the application, make a quick appointment with me. I will leave you should have access to my link, my link to make an appointment, and then you can have me review it before you hit submit. But then you click here, you click submit, and then obviously for me, it's gonna keep sending me emails saying that it's incomplete, that I need more information, because I obviously just made up a bunch of stuff. So once you hit the signature, once you hit the sign button, it's gonna take you to here. It's saying that it needs a lot of action. It needs some action things that I need to do. And the very first one is that I need my parents' signature. So for you, you should have created, or your parents should have created a signature, a pin, a parent pin. You're gonna put yes, and then if you remember, you're gonna get your Student Dream Act account or your DACA Social Security. Your application year would be this, and then you submit your parent pin. Okay. If you're like, oh my God, I have no idea what that is, then you're gonna log back in, and I'll show you how to get your Dream Act ID, because this part is actually pretty confusing sometimes for students. Because it's you don't really look at this application a lot. So let me see if it's gonna send. Yes. Okay. So what you're gonna do is go to the 22-23 application, and then for you, since you already hit submit, what's gonna happen is that it populates that application. What's a load? Let's give it a quick second. It says that your application is already being processed, and you're like, cool. Then you go to here, the CalSAR, and then you click print. And then on here, it'll give you, oh, did it open? There we go. On here, it'll give you your Dream Act application number. So then when you go back to the signature, you click submit. Oh, just let you do it. Confirmation, sorry. I lied. You're gonna go to confirmation, you click the parent signature, or you don't even have to do CalSAR. You could just go to confirmation, and then your CalDream number is gonna be on there. So you can copy paste it. You click the parent signature, you put okay, you put okay. If you know your parent PIN, then it's gonna be nice and easy. You just put your student Dream Act number, which didn't paste, but anyway, you'll put it on there. You'll select the right application year, and then you put your parent PIN. If you forgot it, then you put yes, but I forgot, and then it's gonna ask you the same thing, right? The application year, the first and last name as it shows up on your application, and your email address, and then it's gonna give you steps to reset your account. Okay, so it is pretty straightforward. Once you submit the parent PIN and once you submit the parent signature, then it is considered complete, and then they will begin the processing of your application. Keep in mind that every financial aid financial aid office works at a different timeline. So it could totally be that they don't get to your application just yet. Like maybe they decide to start working on it later. So once you submit your application, you want to make sure that you are monitoring your to-do list and any university emails for any additional information that they request from you. Okay, you will or can expect an award by early or midsummer of next year. I know it takes it's a long time, but that's usually as a returning student when you can expect your financial aid. If by July 1st there is no information about financial aid, then you want to contact your financial aid office right away to figure out if there's anything else you need, or if they received your information or anything like that. Okay, before that is not necessary to freak out, only because financial aid offices do take a while to award returning students. Okay, so it's pretty common, but like I said, make sure that you're monitoring your to-do list or any emails that where you're being requested information, because not responding to those can delay your award process. Okay, so make sure that you're monitoring those things. You can always make an appointment once you have or once you get emails or be requested information. If you're not sure what it is referring to, then you can always hit me up, and I'm happy to walk you through it or help you figure out what it is that they're asking and help you submit. Okay, so once you hit that submit button, again, you're ready to go. Please do let me know, or we'll be checking in to see if you already submitted your financial aid application. Again, the deadline for this application is March 2nd. If there's any issues as you're going, you can always drop in for office hours on Tuesdays from 1 to 5, or make an appointment with me if you have any questions. Okay, so that is that for this video. I hope that you find it helpful, and I hope that my coughing and my raspy voice is not too distracting. Thank you all so much, and best of luck.